Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. All my returning subscribers, we're talking about the cost of living in Jamaica and how to tackle the high cost. Now, we know that there are many Jamaicans living abroad and they work their entire lives saving their money to come home to enjoy their hard-earned money. We've also had an influx of expats who are interested in moving to our beautiful island because of our beautiful beaches and comfortable vacation homes. In this video, I'll share with you some key points on how to tackle these costs, because despite the high cost, one can certainly make a sustainable living on a budget by doing some some minor adjustments. I'll share some personal tips that I have used, and let's not forget that the inflation contributes to the sliding dollar, which makes it very challenging to keep up with the exchange rate on a daily basis. Our living expenses can be tackled by having a system in place. So let's begin. The first thing I want to talk about is the cost of groceries. This can range from food items to cleaning supplies and other commodities, toiletries, pretty much everything that you use around the house, or everything that you consume. When you do a comparison price to the United States, most of the products, especially the ones that are imported, they cost 3 times what they would be in the United States. So in essence, let's say an item may cost $3 in the United States. If you go to the grocery store here, you will be paying at least $9. And that's just a simple example. With the Jamaican exchange rate, it can be thousands of dollars in Jamaican currency. So my suggestion is, if you are a returning resident or an expat, you can actually travel, you can go back and forth, and you can purchase these items and you can pack them in barrels and ship them via cargo. Personally, I normally pack like non-perishable items such as canned foods, detergent, cleaning supplies, toiletries. I'll shop for at least months or a year or two supply of these items, pack them in my barrels, send them off to the shipping company, and it takes literally a few weeks, maybe 6 weeks the most, for it to be here on the island. And then you go to the port and you go through the various process to get those barrels cleared. There's also the option to have the door-to-door service where they'll actually pick up your shipment and they'll take it straight to your door. Considering what you would pay for an item here that is imported, it is way cheaper to pay for shipment and the product. So I look forward to always packing my barrels with all the necessary items that we will need. And I ship them off, and like I said, it has to be non-perishable items, because let's say food items such as sugar or flour, those items, they have a very short shelf life, so you really don't want to stock up on too many of those items. I rarely go to the grocery store here. I probably go there maybe twice a month. I mostly go to the local market where I get all my fruits and vegetables and eggs, of course. I strongly recommend that you please support our local farmers. They sell mostly organic foods. Personally, I believe this island is beautiful in and out from one end of the island to the next. So much beauty around for everyone. However, some people might choose to live in a metropolitan area, which is in the island's capital in Kingston, and you might spend a pretty penny for rent or mortgage, or even to buy property if you're looking into moving to those areas. I believe you can find maybe more for your money as long as you're willing to move away from these areas. And the cost of housing is one thing, but please bear in mind there's also the cost of utilities, which is extremely high. So imagine having your rent, let's say $900 a month in US dollars, and on top of that you have to be paying like $120 for utilities, or could be more. I'll go into that later on. Housing, it's very expensive, but it can also be affordable depending on the location. Moving along to the cost of education. For those who are moving with children, the public school system here is free, except for school supplies, uniforms, and mandatory auxiliary fees that must be paid to the institution. And these fees are significantly cheap, in my opinion, compared to the United States. Because if you would have your child go to a private school in the US, it is extremely high. Here, for private school, you pay a fraction for more than one child of what you would pay for one child in the US. So if you're thinking about the tuition, school supplies, and all the other fees, it only comes out to be a fraction of what you would pay in the US. And I'm referring to the private schools here versus that of the United States. I recommend, if you have kids, it's okay to send them to the public school if you're looking for a much cheaper way for them to get their education. And cheap doesn't mean they're not going to get a good education, because the public school system here is just as great as a private school. The only difference is you might find that private schools, they're much smaller, but the school curriculum is just as great. Their performance academically is on point, so no worries there. And let's move on to the cost of travel. Whether on public transportation or private, the cost of travel is expensive. And gas prices is responsible for this. Gas prices is very high here. I'll talk about that in my next point, but public transportation here in Jamaica, it may not be as reliable and punctual 100% of the time. So if you're thinking about owning a car for personal use, car ownership is very expensive and it's a depreciating value. So I don't look at buying a car to be an investment. So I wouldn't recommend anyone to get anything too expensive. If there's really a need, you could just get something that would get you to and from your destination, or to just take you around the island. The price of a car here is astounding, and I done my research and realized that it's due to shipping costs, customs and duty, and the same is true for car parts. And sometimes it's very hard to source car parts on the island, so you have to order parts from Japan, because that's where most of the vehicles, they're shipped from Japan. They're Japanese vehicles here. And if you have any motor vehicle from the US, then you can source your parts there in the United States as well. The only thing cheap in owning a car here is insurance. And personally, my recommendation is, if you don't need one, then certainly don't get one. It's such an unnecessary expense. As for gas prices, like I said before, they're extremely high, and I want to say that it's mostly due to the fact that it's imported. So everything that is imported on the island, you're gonna pay way more than the true value of the item because of the exchange rate that comes into play. With the sliding dollar going up and down all the time, gas prices is a little volatile as well. It goes up and it comes down, it goes up and it's down. And we want to talk about utilities, electricity. Yes, JPS, we need to have a talk. We certainly want to understand why our electricity bill is so high. It's like no matter what we do to reduce our consumption, the price stays the same. I read through my itemized cost of electricity every month, and I cannot understand why my bill is so high. When I lived in the United States, my monthly electric bill was I think it was like $80 a month. And since I've moved here, my electricity alone runs about $120 a month. and we are not indoors like we are in the US. We are mostly outdoors. We can have the windows and doors open. Where we live, thank God it's not too hot, so there's no need for the air condition. But it's still high. We know electricity is not an imported item, and neither is it a virtual service. So I really want to know what determines the cost. Yes, JPS, we need to hear from you. That's it for today's video, you guys. Let me know if you did find this video helpful. Please leave a comment down below or give me a thumbs up. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe and share.